first time I got in trouble was 1985. I was 6 years old. And we lived in South Florida. And if you knew anything about South Florida at the time, it was home to the Adam Walsh disappearance and the cocaine trade and other rising gangs. And so there was a lot going on. It was really hot, too. My dad traveled all the time, so it left my mom to take care of us. And because it was me, I was 6, my older brother was 7, and then I had a 2-year-old brother. And together we had the strength of like 10 men. So when babysitters would come over, we'd just torture them. And it was really hard. Like after a while, my mom couldn't find a babysitter. So she'd leave us in the car a lot of the time when she would run errands. South Florida is hot. So she'd leave the keys. And we didn't just have a car, we had a high-top conversion van. It was brown and cream, and it was like a spaceship. This thing was just hunks and hunks of steel, and it had enough room in it that we could have our battles and we'd be fine and no one would know. We'd turn the radio on or the air conditioner on and we were fine in there. So this day was like any other day. My mom worked at the school as a teacher, and so after school we'd just go to the car and then we'd find out what errand we were going to run. But first we'd have burger buddies, and then we would be able to go with my mom. So she decided Jefferson's was the place that she was going to go, which is a cross between like a dollar store and Kohl's. It's like nowhere a small child wants to be. So we were like, no, I'm out. So we'd sit in the car. So my mom pulled in and she parked between 2 cars and in back of one. And she left the keys in the ignition and she said, okay, turned to me, don't let anyone in. I'll be right back. My mother was an art teacher. She also had no idea of like an hour or what time it was at night, so we were allowed to watch TV all night, and that was fine. That was great. I loved TV. And around then, I like discovered Punky Brewster, who like was awesome. I was like, I want to be her. She has mismatched shoes and a big dog, and she's got no parents, but this white guy, this big old white guy, takes care of her. And I was like, I'm in. I want that. I like that. But Punky was an orphan. And I had never heard that word before, and an orphan meant that somebody didn't want you, they just left. And I was like, oh, that's terrible, kind of awesome, but terrible. And so that was all I thought about. I just thought about Punky all the time, and I thought about Ricky Schroeder, and this day was like any other day. I was daydreaming in the front seat and thinking about what it's going to be like to marry Ricky Schroeder and go on the honeymoon with the choo-choo train and silver spoons. I was into it. My little brother was taking a little hot, sweaty nap, and I just at some point came to, and all of a sudden thought, looked down at the clock, and I could tell time, I suppose. And I thought, gosh, she's been in there a long time. Like, even for my mom, she's been in there a long time. And then what I can only describe as an anxiety attack was, oh my gosh. I remembered why Punky's mom left. She went into a store and she just never came back. Oh my God. They're gonna split us up. They only take one orphan, everyone knows that. So I was like, okay. I just had McGruff in the classroom, so I'm like, stay calm. I also knew, don't touch your panties cover, but I also was like, stay calm. So I was like, I'm gonna get us out of here. We are going to leave. I'm going to save us. I'll drive. I've seen my mom do it 100 times. I'm sure it's not that hard. So I quickly went over the console and sat in the driver's seat and realized this thing was bigger than I even thought. I mean, you could only see my mom's hair when she was driving from the front, but this thing was really big. And I thought, I can't reach the pedals. So I said I'm gonna have to recruit, I'm gonna have to get my older brother into it. And I said, Tim, Mom said that I should pick her up at the front of Jefferson's. And he was like, nuh-uh. And I was like, yeah, huh? And he's like, you don't know how to drive? And I was like, I do. Mom taught me, she didn't want me to tell you because she knew that you would want to too. Which was my first lie, which then I was like, it was that kind of lie that just bounces from one side of your head to another and you're like, wow, I'm lying, but they're just going with this. I kind of like this feeling. I said, geez, climb on the floor, and then when I tell you to push, you just push. And he said, well, which one? And I said, the big one. And he said, oh, okay. So I said, I'm going to steer. So I said, I'm standing on the seat, standing, and I'm looking over. And he's on the bottom looking up. And he was like, I just don't know if this is a good idea. I was like, it's fine. She told us to go. Cool as a cucumber, just like the McGruff taught me. Just stay calm. And don't let anyone touch you with your panties cover. So I said, okay, push. Nothing happened. So I was like, oh, it's broken. And then he said, well, you have to turn the machine key. And I said, you're right, we do. So I turned it again, and it turned over. And I was like, vroom, 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 standing on the seat, and I was like, okay. Just went down, just like I had saw. We started to roll, and I said, push, run! And we lunged forward, smack into the car in front of us. And then we just kept rolling. Florida is really flat, so you just keep going. And then you just kind of keep going. So we're just kind of inching forward and just kind of pushing the Monte Carlo in front of us. And he's like, oh, you're gonna be in trouble. No, I'm not. We'll just go backwards. I said, okay, and I tell you, we're gonna go back. So I just said, go back to the van. Go back, push. Lunge forward into the car again, which then pushes the next car through into the intersection. So now we're 2 cars in. And then I was like, I am gonna be in trouble. We just kept rolling. This guy comes running up to the car. Open the door, open the door. And I remember what my mom said, no sir, I can't open the door. Just still inching forward, just open the door, open the door. He's hanging on to the van and we're just going. And my brother's like, you have to turn the radio off. It's like a virgin, we're not supposed to listen to that. I was like, I know, I'm gonna do it, hold on. We really weren't supposed to listen to that song. And it was the most popular song during that year. It was really hard to avoid. I was like, excuse me, can you turn this off? They're like, oh, it's a bowling alley? Who are you? So the guy's hanging on the wall again, and I just see all these people gathering, and I hear, even though the windows are only cracked, I hear, where's their mother? Who would leave their kids in the car? Like all this, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be bad. This is gonna be really bad. And then I see my mom come out with 2 huge shopping bags, and she's scared, and then she's angry, and she's sad. It's like all this huge combination. Like she was like, whoa. And I was like, oh. So the door, she comes over, she flies the door open, like throws the car in park, and then just is like, what happened? Looking around, and then, so I was nowhere behind. I hid in the back, and as she filled out insurance papers, and I just hid back there, and my mom came in, and she opened the door, and she climbed in, and I just braced myself. I was like, oh, this is gonna be a beating. It's gonna be really bad. And my mom took a deep breath and put her head on the steering wheel and cried. And she cried, and she just said, I feel like such a bad mom. I feel like such a bad mom. And I said, finally, and then I didn't get in trouble. We went to Wags, which was like a glorified Denny's at that point. And we could have anything we wanted on the menus. It was crazy, it was great. But I felt so bad, and every now and then she would say, yeah, you just really hurt my feelings, And to this day is the way that my mom punishes me, really. Many mothers use it, I guess it's called guilt. Which then, so since 1986, that's the way that I've been getting in trouble.